What's up, football fans? Welcome to another episode of The Extra Point. I got my buddy Cody from 4th and Dynasty with me tonight. Cody, what's up, man?
What's up? I'm feeling good. It's almost football season. I can taste it.
Dude, we are 2 Thursdays away. That's it. That's it. I almost wonder if like next week's going to be the worst week ever because it's so close that it's like, come on. Like, you just don't want it to drag and drag and drag.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you a college football fan at all?
I am. Yeah.
Because that does help.
It does help. You're right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Although, luckily, and you know what? Mac Thursdays, I'm in. I'm ready.
Oh yeah, yeah. I tell you, some of these games actually, like, they're not. I mean, look, it's football. It's on TV. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
My oldest friend from high school, which is really my only friend from high school at this point that I have left, called me yesterday, and we're both Gainesville, Florida, so go Gators. And we're just chatting about everything. And I said, "What's it looking like down there?" I said, "Do you think we're going to be any sort of halfway decent?" And he was like, "Well, I think we're going to be the best 5-win team in the country." And I said, "Yeah, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl is calling our name." So
yeah,
I looked up the schedule. It's like Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn. I mean, it's like 5 top 15 teams and like another. It's like, good luck. So, but that's the SEC now, man. I know this is obviously an NFL show, but yeah, for the folks that are excited, 12-team playoff. And I don't know who's in what conference anymore because apparently UCLA is in the Big Ten and Stanford's in the Atlantic Coast Conference, wrong side of the country, but who's counting? Whatever.
Stanford and Cal. I can't believe it.
That's like, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to go play Wake Forest on a Friday night? Like, get out of here.
That's going to be rough. So, that's going to be rough for them.
It's going to be an interesting season for college football. But yes, pro football just around the corner. And speaking of pro football just around the corner, I am moving the show once football starts to 4 o'clock Pacific time instead of 7 because I, like all of you, want to go watch Thursday night football. So for Thursdays, once the season starts, we're going to be doing Thursday night breakdown. You can catch that here with me, obviously going through the Thursday night matchups, start-sit decisions, to maybe doing a quick analytical thought about what we see as a range of outcomes for players so you can make a decision, do I need this guy on Thursday night or is it better to pivot to a player on Sunday/Monday? On Fridays, as a part of Get Right Fantasy Network, we're going to have 2 separate shows back-to-back where we're going to split up the game slate. We're going to be going through all of the 16 or however many games there are each week, going through sit-start decisions. So you can catch myself and Rasta doing the late show. You can catch Classic Mike and our buddy Kendall getting the East Coasters primed and ready. If you're West Coast, catch both the shows. If you are East Coast, you can catch us live and stay up late, or you can catch us the next day. But we will have, on Get Right Fantasy Network, we will have 5 to 7 days a week. Different content, different channels. So make sure you are subscribed to Get Right Fantasy Network. Make sure you're subscribed to The Extra Point. Cody, where can folks go to subscribe to your channels?
Just Dynasty Pros.
Dynasty Pros.
Exclusively on there on their YouTube, Brian and I, for the 4th and Dynasty podcast.
4th and Dynasty. Our weekly pick'em tournament, I'm running that through Yahoo. It is based off of confidence points. $10 buy-in through LeagueSafe. Should have a good turnout if you are interested in that. Cody, go ahead and drop your channel in the link there. Brandon's asking for that as well, just in the comments there. But yeah, we're doing a weekly pick'em tournament based off of confidence points. So if you are interested in testing your knowledge, not against the spread, just straight up, but assigning confidence points to how confident you are that your pick is the correct pick. We'll run a season-long tournament, all 18 weeks. You can DM me on Sleeper at P. Ruskin. I'll shoot you the LeagueSafe and the details. Let's do a real quick recap of today's news, Cody, because it's news. It's not groundbreaking. It's not massive, but it's news, and it's a brand-name player, Jahan Dotson, to the Eagles. What are your thoughts on the trade? And let's start there. What are your thoughts on the trade?
I liked it for Philly. Yeah. And I think that's going to they're going to obviously benefit the most there. But sorry, I'm trying to connect to these comments.
No, you're good.
But yeah, I think it's really, I don't know what the Commanders are doing with that, but it's going to make some run for the little guys, I think, or for the younger guys, not the little guys.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to potentially, not to ruin anything, we're talking sleepers tonight. We might be talking about some Commanders players. We were probably talking about them before the news, but I think it maybe changes a little bit. This is obviously mostly a dynasty show, but obviously we're in redraft season. What are your thoughts on Jahan Dotson's dynasty value now?
I mean, this kind of solidifies him as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. So, I mean, he's never going to be the wide receiver 1 guy.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's always going to just be a flex play.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to like secure a wide receiver 1, he's a good player to put in for that extra bump.
Right.
He's always going to be right there, but he's going to be reliable for you. He's going to be in the 800, 1,200 yard range and a few touchdowns every year, I think. So, I mean, that's still a good season. It's just not your wide receiver 1.
Yeah, and I like what you just said there because I do think the yardage has potential to be there. The cap and the ceiling is obviously going to be in the touchdown department with Hurts and obviously Saquon, and then of course AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. So I struggle with what I'm doing with him. I know obviously today if you had Luke McCaffrey, I saw him pop up on the trade block for, try to sell high.
Oh yeah.
I did see Jahan Dotson pop up in one of my leagues, which I don't know if that made a ton of sense. Obviously not buying high on him. It's certainly a buy low, but I want to share this trade really quick because I feel bad about it. They didn't know what would happen. I had the 105 and the 107 in my rookie draft in one of my main dynasty league this year. And I was trying to move up from the 107 to the 104. I ended up trading the 107, the 202, and Jahan Dotson. For the 104, I took Malik Neighbors.
Okay.
The 107 became J.J. McCarthy.
Mm.
So I ended up trading J.J. McCarthy, who's out for the year, Jahan Dotson, who just got traded to possibly the worst situation he can be in for at least for this season.
Yep.
For Malik Neighbors. So if my buddy Jesse, if you're listening, I'm so sorry, man. I didn't do that to you on purpose. Obviously, it was months ago, but you just never know how trades are going to go. Obviously, it's dynasty. I think J.J. McCarthy will be fine long term, but at least for this season, and it is a start 2 instead of Superflex. You have to start 2 quarterbacks each week. So sometimes it's just how that's fantasy. That's how it goes. So
that's fantasy.
Well, let's jump in. Why don't you start us off at the top here? We've each got 2 players per position tonight. And why don't you start us off at the top with your sleeper at the quarterback position?
My top quarterback sleeper, I think, and if my co-host Brian is watching, he's going to see this as no surprise because I've been talking him up a while. It's Will Levis.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really Will Levis because it's kind of an all or nothing year for him. It is his second year. I liked what I saw in his first year, even though it might have been a little less productive than I would have liked.
Yep.
But I like what they've done. The Titans have had a quiet offseason, and they've acquired a lot of talent on the defensive side and on the offensive side. So I think they have so many weapons on the offensive side that his gunslinger attitude is going to work well for him this year because I think he could throw it up to Ridley, the best route runner in the game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You have DeAndre Hopkins with the biggest hands on earth, and then you have 2 pass-catching running backs with Okonkwo as your tight end. I mean, if he can't get it done this year, we'll know, and then they'll move on. But that's why I kind of like him as my quarterback 3 in a lot of super flex drafts, or if you're in a 1 quarterback league, I like him as my QB 2. Because he's also got an early bye week, so that's why I also like him.
I think it's week 5 or week 6 if I'm looking. 5. It's pretty early. Yeah, 5. Okay, yeah. I mean, look, we were talking a little bit pre-show. I just took Will Levis in a Superflex redraft league as my QB 3, and I feel fine about it. Right? I took early AJ Brown, AJ Hurts, AJ. Did I say that right? AJ Hurts, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts. Sorry, there's too many A's and J's, and yeah. I took the Eagle stack. I can't remember off the top of my head who my QB2 is. Someone that I'm obviously comfortable. And yeah, I feel really good about having Will Levis as my QB3 in case of emergency. So I like it. I think there's some interesting things happening. I'm not big on the Titans run game this season, so I do think you're right. There could be a lot of volume. Calvin Ridley is not someone we're going to talk about tonight. I don't necessarily think he's a sleeper, but I do think he's undervalued. Yes, so as we get into look, this weekend we know is going to be one of the biggest weekends for redraft leagues, and obviously over the next 7 days. So start looking at some of those ADPs. We know players are going to start creeping up half a round to potentially a full round over the next week. So yeah, just interesting to keep an eye on, guys. My sleeper at the quarterback position, my first, I should say, is none other than Mr. Justin Herbert. ADP right now, overall 122, going off the board is the QB 17, meaning you can get him in round 10. And it's just disrespectful. I understand it. Like, I get it. They want to run the ball. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Justin Herbert last season was the QB 5 overall when it came to the number of touchdown passes he threw. He threw 31 touchdown passes. He does run a little bit. He's certainly not a Lamar Jackson. He's not going to be doing designed, keepers, but he'll get every now and again. But Justin Herbert is hyper efficient. And that's where I think at the end of it all, whether the volume is lower or not, he can get himself to a QB2 season. I don't really see top 12 in his future, but I do think he could crack that top 15, 16 just on efficiency alone. But here's the thing that I want to talk about for just a couple seconds of why Justin Herbert is a sleeper in my mind. Number one, their defense is right now ranked as the 28th best. Now, that's not Jerry Jones math. That's real math, meaning that they are the 4th worst defense projected in the entire NFL. So that's my first point. Keep that in mind. Here's my second point. Their offensive line ranks 12th. So it's not bad, but it's not exactly the Lions who are ranked number 1 where we know there's going to be hyper efficiency. And they are the second, quote unquote, easiest schedule in the league. So if you tell me we know they don't have receivers, or at least we don't believe that they have receivers, right? Everyone's super high on Ladd McConkey. You're telling me that they have the 28th worst defense, so not going to stop anybody. They're going to have to be behind in a lot of games. They don't have the offensive line to really move people out of the way to run the ball they want to run, the way they want to run it, at least not this season. So what is Justin Herbert going to do? We're down 7 points, 10 points, 14 points. Just keep handing it off to Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins to get 3 yards a carry? Like, they're going to have to throw. So I think where you can draft Justin Herbert at a value in round 10 is criminal, number one. And number two, if it's a super flex league, give me Justin Herbert as a cheap QB2. Let me load up on running back and wide receiver so that I can make up the ceiling that I'm not getting from what Herbert could have been. And I'm still getting a hyper-efficient starter where there's no backup, there's no contract. It's not like we have a quarterback battle like we might have in Las Vegas. So to me, give me Justin Herbert in the 10th as a sleeper, as somebody who's going to outperform his ADP, and I'm in. I'm in on that all day. So Justin Herbert for me as my first QB sleeper. Cody, who's your second? And give us some reasons why we should keep an eye on this player.
The second is Baker Mayfield. Now, he might not necessarily ADP-wise be going kind of as a sleeper, but I think he's easily a quarterback 2 in a lot of super flex leagues. And, if you're in a 14 or 16 team league, Baker Mayfield's a good quarterback to have because he does have the gunslinger moxie like Will Levis. I think you can see a trend here that I like the gunslingers. Yeah, but he's a little bit more consistent, and we know he's a proven commodity. And he didn't lose any of his weapons. He still has his K-Dot, and he has Chris Godwin. Maybe Jalen McMillan's going to actually be a solid wide receiver.
Could be a thing. Yep.
And you have Mr. 1000 himself, Mike Evans. I'm gonna bet on Baker Mayfield still being a guy.
Yep.
And I'm happy to have him. So his little fall, he's still going behind even like the Trevor Lawrence's and stuff, even though I think Trevor Lawrence is being undervalued as well, kind of like in the same tier as Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust any of the second-year quarterbacks or even the rookies this year, except for Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, to go above Baker Mayfield. I'd rather take the proven commodity in Baker Mayfield this year in redraft.
Yeah, I mean, look, last year was his first ever season where he finished as a QB1. I don't have him projected as a QB1, but I do have him in the top 16.
Yeah.
So he's a solid QB2. I think the piece that you said that I really like the most is Mr. 1000, Mike Evans. Like, it's security, right? What I will say about Baker, and we're not going to talk about it, at least I don't think we are. Maybe we are. Oh, I won't ruin it then. We'll wait till we get to the running backs, but we'll get into the wide receivers. But Jalen McMillan's not someone we're going to talk about tonight. I just want to mention him really quickly. I almost put him in this list when we get to wide receivers as a sleeper. I think Chris Godwin moving back into the slot should help him. I was looking up some stats before the show. I didn't realize this. Chris Godwin quietly put together 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Now he had Tom Brady for 2 of those 3. So let's not worry about when the GOAT is throwing you the ball. I didn't realize he had 1,000 yards last year. It was very, very
Quiet.
quiet. It was very quiet. And I don't have a ton of exposure to Chris Godwin. He's 28. So just not my favorite player. But Baker can do it. He can do it. So, yeah, good sleeper in a super flex league. If it's a single quarterback league, Cody, would you take him as your QB2, or would you maybe try to pivot late round to somebody else, or do you feel good with Baker in a single quarterback league?
I feel great if I can get Baker as my QB2.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. My next quarterback sleeper is a deep sleeper, and it made me feel weird when I wrote it up. It's going to make me feel weird talking about it, but the more that I read it and the more I look into it, I'm okay with it. His ADP is 281. He's going off the board as QB 34, which means he is being drafted in round 23, which means he's not being drafted. Nobody's redraft league is going that deep. In 2023, he finished as the QB 21. So he finished as a QB 2. Gardner Minshew. He was just named the starter. And look, nobody wants Gardner Minshew. This is a show about sleepers. If you were expecting us to turn into, who's going to be the overall QB1, you wanted to hear about Josh Allen, that's not this show, right? Last week we went into league winners. Gardner Minshew was not in my league winners, but it's a deep sleeper, and here's why it's a deep sleeper. If you need a bye week, fill in. If you need 66 quarterbacks, started and played an NFL game last year. So you're not drafting Gardner Minshew in your league. Gardner Minshew is going to be on your waiver wire. We just talked about Will Levis has a week 5 bye. I'm 100% positive because I've done so many best ball drafts. The Chargers and the Lions have the same bye week. It's either week 5 or week 6. I think it's also week 5. I can look it up in just a second. But there's going to be players that you have exposure to who are going to go on bye. We know injuries are going to happen. I actually kind of like the Raiders' weapons. Devontae Adams was number 2 last season in targets, 187. Pierce wants to throw the ball. They threw it 266 times under McDonough. They now increased that to just shy of 300 passing attempts from week 8 on last year with Antonio Pierce once Josh McDaniel was gone. Minshew threw for 3,300 yards last season. He was 15-9, so it's not sexy. It's not somebody that you're pining for. But go take Baker Mayfield as your QB2. Great, do it. Take Will Levis. Take Justin Herbert. But if you get into a sticky pinch and you need somebody, Minshew, I think, is a good player to fill in for 1 week. It's someone that's – let me ask you this because this was kind of my thought process. Would you rather have Jacoby Brissett or Gardner Minshew as a bye week fill-in quarterback?
I'd take Gardner. Yeah,
right.
I would.
Yeah, I think most people would. Now the Patriots suck. So let me give you this as my other. This was my other litmus test. Would you rather take for 1 week Gardner Minshew or Sam Darnold?
It's close, but I mean I'd take Sam Darnold.
I would too.
But I'm also just I'm a biased Vikings fan. So
right. But my point is you had to think about it, meaning that it's not that clear cut of like, hey, here's a guy that we think is going to be, the starter all year. We know Sam Darnold's going to be the starter all year. Minshew may not be.
Yeah.
He probably will be, but he may not be. Aiden O'Connell was competent. So again, it's a sleeper show. Go find guys that for 1 week could get you 12 to 15 points. And if it's the week that Gardner Minshew throws it 12 times, targets Devontae Adams 12 times, and 2 of those turn into touchdowns, it's a good week. It's a good week. So
that could be the difference between the 60% share of winning money to 20% share of winning money.
100%. I mean, look, Rafi's in the show. What up, Rafi? He's always around. He's our good buddy. Minshew could be a league winner if all the other QBs get hurt again this year. Look, no one drafted Joe Flacco last year, and Joe Flacco was a 6-7 week league winner. Exactly. He was a lot better than Deshaun Watson was. So again, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm going to go and grab Gardner Minshew as someone I even want to roster. Just keep an eye on him. It's a sleeper show. So I want to go back real quick before we move positions here. Rafi, it's interesting with the weapons he has. Talking about Baker Mayfield in Evans and Godwin, that Mayfield is ranked that low. How many other quarterbacks ahead of him have 2 legit 1,000-yard wide receivers? I don't know that any of them do.
Yeah, I mean, excuse
me. Sorry to cut you off. Other than the obvious ones.
Yeah.
Right, like other than Jalen Hurts, who's got Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown and apparently now Jahan Dotson. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to what he did with Cleveland and everything, the inconsistency that he found or that he saw in those different places. But Canales, I think, fixed him a little bit, and now I
Yep.
know Canales isn't there. I think he's going to be fixing Bryce Young this year, and I think he's going to be
Yep.
a lot better. But I still think that is still going to progress very well, and that's what a gunslinger needs are those weapons. So I think, yeah, I think he's definitely too low.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I agree. Let's get to George question here. George Playo one, is AD Mitchell a sleeper this year? What do you think, Cody?
I think a little bit because I think he's almost for sure the wide receiver 2 or 3 in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't really think Josh Downs can test test him that much once he actually gets through the playbook and figures out his role. I
Yep.
think he's just a little bit better of a player than Josh Downs is.
Well,
And
Josh
Alec
Downs is still hurt.
and then Alec Pierce, he's definitely better than Alec
Yeah.
Pierce. So he's the wide receiver 2 in that value, and you can get him in the 16th and 17th round. So yeah,
Yeah.
if I'm getting a wide receiver 2 that late, I'm gonna be very happy with that.
Yeah, it's hard for me to call him a sleeper because I've been so in on him since,
Exactly.
since rookie draft, and obviously since all of the landing spots have sort of come to fruition with these guys. He scored a touchdown tonight. He got his
Yep.
helmet ripped off and scored a touchdown. So I think the question for me with AD Mitchell is going to be about volume. There are people, Kendall's not here tonight, but Kendall has firmly planted his flag in the Anthony Richardson camp. I know our buddy Victorious is here. I don't believe he's a huge Anthony Richardson truther. He doesn't like anyone outside of Richardson, Pittman, and Taylor. So if you are in on Richardson, you're probably in on Mitchell. If you're out on Richardson, you're probably lower and out on Mitchell. I think what I'm looking for in players like AD Mitchell, is there a clear path to wide receiver 2 volume? The answer to that is yes. Can he be relevant in an offense that we like, that we should take a step forward? It was a playoff team last year. So, yeah, George Playo 1, go grab AD Mitchell. You're not going to hear any complaining from us. So, speaking of running backs, I was going to say wide receivers, but I did the running backs first. So, I guess we're going to go to wide receivers. It was almost a perfect transition. I actually have 3, so I'm going to go first on the running backs because I want to talk about my 2 sleepers after I talk about this player really quickly. I want to start with just really quickly Roschon Johnson. It's a sleeper, but it's also an ambiguous situation. He's ADP 206 overall. He's the running back 65, which I couldn't believe. That was crazy. He's going in round 17, so he's not being drafted. But look, I believe, and I've said this many times, I really believe Khalil Herbert is a trade candidate. I think that's why he's playing in the preseason games and Roschon's not playing a ton. Obviously, they're not going to roll DeAndre Swift out there. Swift has his injury history. So I want you to just keep an eye. Roschon Johnson more than likely will be on your waivers. I just want you to keep an eye on his involvement the first 2 to 3 weeks, because if a Khalil Herbert trade happens, he's going to be the most expensive, fab dump of the week, whatever week that occurs. But I want you to try to take and call your shot on him in week 3 or 4. I just don't see a world where Khalil Herbert, outside of an early Swift injury, I just don't see a world where they don't deal Khalil Herbert and try to get something back from him. Are you in on that take? Are you disagree? What are your thoughts on that? Roschon's relevance being related to Khalil Herbert's roster spot.
I think you're spot on because Herbert's in a contract year as well. It's his
Yeah.
4th year. He's in a contract year, and then they don't have to break the relationship off. And it seems like Poles really likes to make sure that guys like where they're at and like will do good for the players that have treated them right as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do
So
right
I
by
think
them.
they'll
Yeah.
trade him to a situation that he's good with, and then they get to reset their RB2 to year 2 instead of year 4.
Right. Right. Yep. Look, Dallas is the obvious place. It just screams Khalil Herbert because
Really
that's a disaster. I just can't wait to see that dumpster fire take shape. But look, we all know the running back is the most injured position of all the skill position guys. Things are going to happen. Guys that are going to get knocked out are going to need to be replaced. Playoff teams or teams that are pushing for playoffs are going to want to build depth. So there's places we're not thinking of. San Francisco could be a Khalil Herbert landing spot. You've got Christian
Yep.
McCaffrey and a whole bunch of Isaac Arendo's hurt, Elijah Mitchell's hurt. Like Jordan Mason has suddenly crept up as the new name. So I'm not saying that's where he's going to go, but a playoff team like that where you're not thinking about him could be really interesting. So anyway, Roshan, just keep an eye on him. Why don't you give us one of yours as we switch gears here?
I think a really good sleeper this year is Chase Brown. I think he's still going a little bit after Zach Moss, and I haven't been, and I don't think I ever will be a believer in Zach Moss. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it just is what it is. But he's been getting first team reps consistently in training camp and in the games. But obviously, he's a second year back as well, so you want him to get reps in the preseason.
Yep.
So he's playing a little bit longer than some of the other starters. But I think he's a legitimate running threat where he's a little bit different than Mixon is. He's not as good in the passing game as Joe Mixon was, but he's a downhill runner, and he has good hips and balance that he's exactly what Cincinnati's looking for. And especially if Jamar Chase doesn't have any reps in the preseason,
right,
you're gonna have to give him a little bit of time.
Yep.
And what helps you get confidence as a wide receiver? Play action, wide open plays, and I think that's what it's going to be.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not quite ready to buy the Chase Brown ahead of Zach Moss hype, but the ADP has come down from where I think 2 weeks ago it was like as soon as Moss went out with the injury, the spike happened. Sure. And now that Moss is back in camp and he's getting runs with the ones, Brown's ADP has seemed to settle, but they're a lot closer than I think a lot of people realize. So, if you're finishing up your best ball drafts and you've got Joe Burrow, take a shot on either one of those running backs to stack, with the correlation. Obviously, if you're going Burrow, you've probably got Chase or Higgins. But yeah, I think, I'll be honest, it's a backfield and redraft I'm staying away from if I can help it.
Yeah.
I just don't. I think they're probably going to Tennessee, Pittsburgh. I know Jaylen Warren just got the hamstring thing, but I just think it's going to be more. Chase Brown's going to be more relevant than Zach Moss owners want him to be. I agree with you. So yeah, I like it as a sleeper.
And you can agree or disagree with this, but it seems like more often than not, people are trying to go zero running back method. And so it's like I could see Chase Brown being the big zero running back.
Could be
for a lot of people. So.
Yep, I agree. I agree with that actually. Which, ironically, I think my guy that I'm going to talk about here in a second is also going to be in that zero running back mix, especially after the news today. So ADP of overall 91st player off the board, running back 33 in round 7. With Jahan Dotson getting traded, I wrote it up. It's a 14%. Let me just excuse myself real quick. It is a 14% market share that is being vacated. I've been in on Austin Eckler for the last month, and it's simply because Brian Robinson finished his RB21 in 15 games in 2023. Last year, he was 733 and 5. He had 4 pass catching touchdowns. He scored 9 touchdowns total. Look, the run game coordinator is Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn drafted Austin Eckler. Yep. I 100% believe that Anthony Lynn went into Cliff Kingsbury, who went into I don't know who the new GM is there in Washington, but they all sat down and he said, give me Austin Eckler as our RB2. I don't think you're getting Austin Eckler like you're getting him as a first round player 2, 3, 4 years ago when he was a top 3 running back for the Chargers. That's not what you're drafting him for. You're drafting him for his pass catching. You're drafting him because he is a very competent backup in case Brian Robinson gets injured. It's going to be more of a timeshare than you want. Cliff Kingsbury has always had more of a committee approach, and he's always favored pass-catching running backs, which is why when Chase Edmonds left Arizona to go to Miami, people were so excited on Chase Edmonds. Was it 3 years? I think it was 3 years ago. He was being drafted as like the RB8, RB9 that year. Now, he ended up sputtering out and nothing came of it. Sorry for Chase Edmonds, but I think for round 7, Austin Eckler as my RB3, as a flex spot, as a bye week fill-in, as a sleeper, to me, it's a no-brainer because we've seen what he can actually do. So, again, you're not drafting Austin Eckler to be an overall RB1. You're certainly not drafting him to be in the top 12, and that's fine. But I do think at the end of the day, you're getting a player who, even with a healthy Brian Robinson, could still end up being the 1A if Brian Robinson's the 1B. I think that's in the range of outcomes. I don't think I'm crazy to say that. So, yeah, take your shot. If you're out, you're out. It's fine. Not going to hurt my feelings. But I think I've got 1 or 2 leagues left that haven't drafted yet. And I certainly, as I start to build out my roster, especially if the way I like to build is heavy wide receiver, Austin Eckler's in my player pool of players that I'm considering. If there's a better value, I'll take the better value. But let me ask you this. Who would you rather have in that round? Excuse me. Austin Eckler or Chase Brown?
Eckler.
Eckler over Brown.
Okay. Yeah, just a slight margin, but I think you bring up some really good points about how it's going to be closer in the committee, and I can see a lot of the teams that we're talking about right now. That's the Bengals, the Commanders, and my next guy. They're going to be. Don't be surprised to see 2 running backs on the field.
Yeah.
In a lot of plays, there's going to be a lot of 2 running back sets out there this year.
Agreed.
I think it's going to be a lot more than what we expect for RPO games, and just to have another wide receiver out there or another pass catcher out there. So I think it's a really interesting take, but we'll just go right into.
Well, before we do real quick, this is a good one. Corum or Eckler?
I'd still go Eckler for sure.
I would too, simply because I still think Kyron's the guy. I know there's people that want to, injury history and this and that and the other, and that's true. But look, any player can get hurt on any play. Kyron's going to miss games. I think he's going to miss a few. That's just his past. It's like James Conner, right? It's just going to happen. My question, though, is because of how much Sean McVay believes in him, I think he just goes right back into the lineup, even if Corum takes over for the 1 or 2 games that Kyron misses. But yeah, I would still take Eckler in that range. So, all right, let's jump in. One more running back for you, and I will be honest, I'm glad that you put him on your list because he was on mine. So I'm really happy we're going to talk about this player because I'm in. So let's see what we got here.
My second player is Bucky Irving. He's undoubtedly going to be the running back 2 in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I really love Sean Tucker, so that really hurts my soul, but it just is what it is, right? He's a better blocker, and he's frankly a better pass catcher as well. I mean, that's undeniable. So it just, I think the offense doesn't change that much if you go from Rachaad White to Bucky Irving either.
Right.
And we've already talked about with the gunslinger like Baker Mayfield, if you have a dump off option of Bucky Irving, I'm really happy with that dump off option. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for that. And I think he's one of the running backs one of the rookie running backs that actually got a good destination.
Yes.
That I think he can definitely see playing time this year.
Yep.
Now it's just more of does he do enough in the first 3 weeks to stay on Bowles' good side? Because if he doesn't, then I can see him getting the rug pulled out of him or out from under him. But I think he's going to do it anyway.
I agree. Yeah, I think he's going to be great. I'll be honest. There's 2 key things for me with Bucky Irving. Number 1, Baker Mayfield checks the ball down at the highest rate of anyone in the league. That's exactly what I'm looking for in my running backs is pass catching upside because it's just like rushing quarterbacks. It's a cheat code in fantasy, especially in full PPR, right? Derrick Henry's going to outscore Bucky Irving by 100 points. Derrick Henry's going to probably catch less passes than Bucky Irving's going to catch the whole season. In fact, I'd almost bet that for sure. The second piece for me is that I'm a little bit lower on Rachaad White because of Bucky Irving, and I agree with you, Cody. It's exactly for the reason you just said. I don't know that the offense changes that much, right? Like, to me, Rachaad White's season last year was pure volume.
Yep.
Dave Canales is gone. Todd Bowles is a very defensive, minded head coach. He's been a defensive coordinator for the majority of his time in the league, but more years than he has been a head coach. So curious to see what the offense looks like. I also think that the Buccaneers, because the Falcons are flat out, they've been doing some stuff recently on defense, so that's made me feel better. But after the draft, I was like, well, I thought if they had drafted anybody good in the first round on defense, I'm like, they're going to win the division. I think the Bucs and the Falcons are going to be kind of neck and neck for that division. So if there's a possibility of the Buccaneers getting in the playoffs and saving Rachaad White and not having to use him as much as they did last season and make a playoff run, that's Bucky Irving time. So, yeah, I really, really like Bucky Irving. And I think the majority of the community is in on him. You can see his ADP has pretty much steadily risen month over month since the NFL draft. So, yeah, in on Bucky Irving for sure. My last sleeper at the running back position, ADP of 151 overall, running back 51 in the 12th round, Jaleel McLaughlin. And I knew this, coming into the show tonight was going to be somebody in this backfield. Did my research. Denver targeted the running back the most in the league in 23 last year. Sean Payton's the head coach last year. So I think you can expect that to translate again this year, especially with Bo Nix being named the starter. It's a rookie quarterback. Tim Patrick's back, but he's old and he's been banged up. Jerry Jeudy's out of town. So, you've got Marvin Mims who, some people like, some people don't. You really have Cortland Sutton. That's your real receiving threat, which says to me, Jaleel McLaughlin, if he is able to catch passes, and Javonte too, but I do believe that the Denver running backs are going to become an important part of the passing game because they just don't have much else, especially for Bo Nix. This stat floored me when I found it. Jaleel McLaughlin was 5.3 yards per carry. Javonte was 3.5. So basically 2 full yards more. Look, Samaje Perine's old. He's being talked about as possibly a cut candidate. Estime's a rookie. I was out on an Estime throughout all of redraft. He's just so slow.
Yeah.
He's probably more of like a goal line guy inside the 5. He's a bruiser and just go and pound the rock into the end zone. I think that's very realistic for what his skill set is. But look, it's widely assumed that this is more of a committee. And I think everyone pretty much assumes that that's what it's going to be, which is why Javonte's ADP is so low because of the rise of Jaleel McLaughlin. But even if it's not, go look at what Sean Payton has historically done. Go back to Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, right? Look at what he did in New Orleans. He used both players. So even if Javonte is the guy, Jaleel McLaughlin's going to have a role. And I think it's a good sleeper. I mean, look, Javonte's is coming into his second year off the ACL. That's generally when we see an uptick in production. So I just don't see a path for Javonte to just outright win the job as a bell cow. I don't think that's what Payton wants. I don't think that's historically how he's run his teams. So Jaleel McLaughlin as a sleeper in the 12th round of somebody who could very easily end up being a flex play for you, especially as we get into the second half of the season come playoff time. So got a good question in the chat here before we move to wide receiver. Jerome Ford, Jaleel McLaughlin.
I think just because of the early down work that Jerome Ford's going to get, it's Jerome Ford.
Yeah.
We still, I agree with everything you said about Jaleel McLaughlin, but he's still the RB2 for sure.
Correct, 100%.
Jerome Ford's the RB1 until Nick Chubb comes back, and we don't know when that is. Now, I know he's practicing and stuff, and he might not actually get on the PUP list, so we don't know. But I still think Ford's going to get a little bit more work because of the injury that Chubb had. So they're going to protect him.
It's Ford for me, but I don't think Jerome Ford goes away when Nick Chubb comes back. I think Ford's going to be an important. I think that's going to be another one to keep an eye on. I think that's going to be more of a committee than people are expecting. I think a lot of people are still looking at the name of Nick Chubb. And I'll be honest, I've had to check myself a couple times in drafts and especially in best ball drafts where I'm like, Nick Chubb in the 10th round, give me that. But then I go over and I'm like, wait a minute, it could be week 8, 9, 10 before he plays. We don't know.
Yep.
It could be a very long time. So I like this comment here from DeJuice. Ford's not a slouch in the passing game. Look, Jerome Ford was a good player last year. I think he performed admirably. Look, they didn't bring – where is Kareem Hunt right now? Is he there? He's not there.
On the couch. Yep.
Right, yeah, that's it. They didn't bring – that's what I was like. They didn't bring Kareem Hunt back.
Strong got hurt and just went off the cart today.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. I don't know if it's that serious, but he might be a little banged up. So
yeah. So DeJuice has a really good. That was just so funny. He just put this in the chat. That's exactly what I was just going to say. Draft Nick Chubb and put him on your IR spot. If you can go, if your league has IR spots, and I assume everybody's has at least one, if not 2. Sleeper will let you do that, and most people are playing on Sleeper. If you're on another platform, I haven't played on Yahoo or ESPN in forever, but. Go grab Jonathan Brooks, go grab Nick Chubb, go grab TJ Hawkinson and throw them on your IR spot until they're ready to come back in whatever week it is. Those are great guys to have. That'll be second half of the year, important players. So let's jump in at wide receiver and give us one of the guys that you're looking at as a sleeper who could have some relevance this season.
I actually think Jalen Tolbert for the Cowboys is going to be a pretty good draft sleeper. I doubt he's getting drafted in any leagues.
Yeah.
But, watch him on the waiver wire because I think he's going to actually outpace Cooks because Cooks is another year older. Yeah. We don't know what Dak's situation really is. And to be frank, I think Jerry Jones, just based off what Jerry Jones is doing, it's just I think he'll pay CD and I think he'll pay Micah. and he's going to let Dak walk.
That's what I think as well.
But when that happens, they're going to want to see what Trey Lance is, so they might just blow it up.
I think
and what
so
do you
too.
want to see? You want to see some of the young guys. So I think
Yep.
Jalen Hurts might have a wide receiver 2 on the Cowboys depth chart, probably locked up by the end of the season, but I still think he's going to be the wide receiver 3. I also question Jake Ferguson. I don't really think of him as.
We will have none of that slander. Jake Ferguson was my league winner last week.
I like Jake Ferguson.
I'm kidding.
But I don't think I don't think he's going to have the production that I want him to.
Yeah.
So it just I like Tolbert in this way. Like, they made him learn every position.
Yeah.
That's why he didn't really play the first year and a half there, because he really needed to really get going. So I think this is the year we'll see Tolbert a little bit more.
Yeah, I just don't know who the wide receiver. I'll be honest. Last week we did the league winners show. It's why I had Jake Ferguson as a league winner, because I believe he's the wide receiver 2 for the Cowboys. I know he's the tight end, but that's my point, right? Like, Mark Andrews is the wide receiver 1 for the Ravens, right? Travis Kelce is the tight end, but he's the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs.
Yep.
I just don't know who's going to step up, because I don't believe in Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is like 29. I mean, he's like 40 years old. You know what I mean? Like, it's Jake Ferguson had 102 targets last year. I think Brandon Cooks only had like 81.
Yep.
So to me, the Juice, good comment here. For Jake Ferguson's a red zone hog. It's a committee. Look, it's a committee backfield.
It is. Yep.
We have no clue who it's going to be week to week. You know, it's going to be CD. You know, it's going to be Dak. You know, it's going to be Ferguson.
Step up. So.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be Ferguson, at least at tight end. So like another wide receiver has to get on the field. So after our show, we did a kind of an off-camera chat, and I did we asked, who's going to get paid of the 3 Cowboys. I think they're going to let Dak walk. He'll get a job. He's expensive. He's getting older. I think the Cowboys are going to blow it up. So I agree with you. I think they'll pay CD, and I think they'll pay Micah. But yeah, Jalen Tolbert's an interesting player to keep an eye on. I know there's some people that like Brandon Cooks for that reason. There's people that say he's going to do it. So there's definitely question marks about who the second guy is there in Dallas. So I'm going to jump in with Romeo Doubs here. ADP 127th player off the board as the wide receiver 52 in the 10th round.
Absolutely criminal again.
It's criminal again because, look, it's an offense that we love with a quarterback who just finished his QB5 and just got the richest contract in history. Romeo Doubs finished last year in 23 as the wide receiver 36, and on 96 targets, he only caught 59 of them. So that to me is a knock against him more so than a knock against Love. But he was 59 for 674 and 8. And the 8 stood out to me because I've never been a Christian Watson truther. He's always hurt. I know anybody can get hurt on any play, but I just don't know what his ceiling is anymore. If he's fully healthy, he's the deep shot red zone guy. He's the biggest, baddest, best thing they have on paper on that team.
Yep.
But the best ability is availability, and he ain't always available. So if you believe the camp reports, and I tend to not read a ton of them because I want to drown out a bit of the noise and keep myself sane, supposedly Romeo Doubs is Jordan Love's go-to target, again, if you believe the camp reports. But look, here's what we do know as a fact. 61% of the time they passed the ball through the air last season to the wide receiver position. Jordan Love's going to throw. Josh Jacobs is an upgrade to me over everybody and everything that they've had in that backfield over Aaron Jones. So here are the players that are being drafted around Romeo Doubs. We'll play a quick game. You ready?
Yep.
Would you rather have Romeo Doubs or Josh Palmer?
Doubs.
Doubs, Tyler Lockett.
Doubs.
Doubs, Jerry Jeudy.
It's close, but I'd take Doubs.
Okay. Doubs, Mike Williams.
Doubs.
And the last one, Doubs or Brandon Cooks.
Doubs.
So it's really interesting because those are the next 6 players off the board outside of Jacoby Myers, who I left off on purpose because I'd rather have Myers over Doubs. I imagine you would as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I left him off because he's like right neck and neck in ADP with Doubs. But those other guys are pretty consistently. I did a universal ADP, Sleeper, Yahoo, and ESPN. Yep. They're all right there. To me, that's a tier break. That's a tier break for me with those names, right? Now, look, Palmer, I'm betting against Palmer because I just don't see the talent more so than I am the opportunity, because I think everyone believes that it's going to be McConkey, but I think it'll be a lower volume. But like Herbert's got to throw it to somebody. So Palmer's relevant.
Yeah.
But the passing volume with Love, the offense in Green Bay. So I like what's happening there. Let's get to the chat real quick before we do our next two, because chat's blowing up here, which is awesome. I want to just kind of scoot back here. DeJuice, I like Jalen Wright as an RB sleeper. Both Achane and Mostert have never played a full season. Thoughts on that comment?
I think Jalen Wright takes over Mostert's spot for sure.
Yeah.
But Achane, if he's available, he's going to be the guy for sure. But also Daniel, he's shown that he likes playing multiple running backs. So I mean, any of them are probably going to be a good option. Which also makes it hard to know which one you want.
It's challenging for sure. If Victorious is in here, he will not tolerate any Achane slander. A for Achane, he is to the moon. But I didn't include Jalen Wright as a sleeper simply because I think a lot of people are in on him.
Exactly.
And I kind of wanted to go the route of like, I see the path for him. I actually think Jalen Wright's a fantastic pick. Achane has missed game. Mostert's old. He's missed time. You're right. Mike McDaniel will play multiple guys. Achane is speedy. Jalen Wright is speedy. So to me, I left him off this list because I'm like, yeah, I think everyone's pretty in on it. So I like it. I think he's going to be relevant. Let's shift to Buffalo because these are some names I thought about as well. Thoughts on Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman as sleepers with Curtis Samuel getting banged up already?
I think it's like what we've said with a lot of the rookies. I don't think Keon Coleman really is a sleeper just because of what rookie drafts has already done for him. Yeah. And I mean, with Stephon Diggs gone, he kind of have to have someone else there, and that's the guy.
Yeah.
Khalil Shakir, yeah, I could see it for sure. I mean, I'm a Curtis Samuel guy, so it's just more. Yeah. I think he's still getting slept on. I know he's banged up right now, but he always he's a little bit always banged up, but always there to play. He's always questionable, but he always plays. Yeah. So I would still put my basket into Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, I like Khalil Shakir. I don't know. To me, again, it's kind of like Jalen Wright. I think enough people are in on him. I didn't want to include him as a quote-unquote sleeper simply because, number one, from week 14 on last year, he was the number one wide receiver in Buffalo. He paced them in targets and catches. I have to show this comment because it's just going to has to be said. Rafi saying, I want to believe in Coleman, but I just keep seeing more Funchess than Mike Evans. I don't want that to come to fruition because I like Keon Coleman. I think he could be a really solid player. Ultimately, I think he could be the wide receiver one in Buffalo. I'm not ready to plant my flag on that, but I do think he's a really good player. So we'll see what he ends up becoming.
Funchess never had the breakaway speed Coleman
Correct.
Had. So I think that's where it differs a little bit. And I think that's where you're going to see a little bit more Mike Evans. I'm not saying he's going to be Mike Evans. We don't know that yet. Yeah. But I think – yeah, you never saw the breakaway speeds from Funchess, and I don't see Coleman changing to tight end at any point of his career.
Yeah, I think the one thing people forget about Keon Coleman, especially casual, if you're listening to this show, you're not a casual, you're a diehard like us. But I think people who are just getting into their research or maybe you're, a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of what they know about these rookies. Keon Coleman was a basketball player at Michigan State before he transferred to Florida State. He has not been playing football that long.
Yeah.
Remember that as like this is a guy who's 21 years old. He's still growing. He's still learning how to use his body at the professional level as an athlete. He's still got to learn not only football in terms of the X's and O's and all of that. He's got to learn how to be a pro. So I think you got to give him some time, and we'll see what it is. But yeah. Let's jump in 2 more wide receivers, and then we'll kind of come back in the chat because there's still some good questions in here that I want to get to. But give us your second wide receiver sleeper here.
My second sleeper is Darnell Mooney. He's going to be the wide receiver 2 in Atlanta this year. After London, but so you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, and you have Bijan. Obviously, the top 3 targets for sure.
Yep.
It's kind of like the Cowboy situation, right? You know where these certain players are going to be and what they are. Someone else has to be there.
Yeah.
And who's probably like Darnell Mooney isn't that bad of a player, and he played on some bad Chicago teams and he was still relevant.
Yep.
So I don't think people are remembering that. So you're getting him in drafts a lot or way too low, and I think he's a good play for a flex spot for sure.
Well, and who is it that came over from Arizona? That name is just off the tip of my tongue that just got hurt and is now out for the year.
Rondale Moore.
Thank you, Rondale Moore. I was just like sitting right there. So Rondale Moore is out for the season now. So, an interesting thought that I've had about Darnell Mooney, because I've taken some shares of him in best ball when I have some cousin stacks because it's so
Yep.
cheap, right?
Yep.
If you're a defensive coordinator, who are you circling? Because I know who I'm circling. Drake London. Yep. Kyle Pitts. Yep. Oh, yeah. And that guy in the backfield, he's pretty good at the football too. I think there's going to be a lot of open space for Darnell Mooney to run into because you just, if you're a defensive coordinator, I'm literally saying to my guys, all right, if Darnell Mooney beats us, we're getting beat. But don't let London, Pitts, or Bijan beat us today, guys. I mean, that's how I set up my team. So, yeah, I like it. I like Mooney. Again, I know we talked pre-show. There's a couple guys that obviously can't include everyone that I was like, man, I saw your names come in the show doc. I was like, good. I'm glad we're going to talk about these guys because I couldn't get to them all. So, yeah, I agree with you. I'm in on Darnell Mooney as a sleeper this year as well. Again, what I'm looking for is clear path to relevance, and he has it. He definitely has it. So, this one actually was a mid-morning edition. I had someone else in here. I switched it out. We're going to talk about a player who's going undrafted right now, ADP of 250, wide receiver 90. But I said it's a mid-morning edition because Jahan Dotson got traded today. So who is the wide receiver 2 in Washington right now? We talked about Austin Eckler. He's a pass catcher. There's a tight end we're going to talk about in a little bit here that I think has to be considered a sleeper now. I know McCaffrey played in the second half of the first preseason game. That's not where you wanted to see him. I know he's running with the threes in practice right now. I get it. But is De'Ami Brown really the guy? Because I've seen De'Ami Brown play, and so have you, and he's never really he's been in the league, 3 years now? He's never really taken a hold of any opportunities that have been given to him. I can't name anyone else in that receiver room that I think is going to step up. So, and this is why I say Luke McCaffrey is a sleeper. And this is the key component to my Luke McCaffrey sleeper pick, if the Commanders don't trade for Brandon Ayuk or go and find somebody else, then you can't tell me they're going into this season with just Terry McLaurin. Like, that's not your plan, right? I get it. You're probably not winning the division, but they're going to be better than I think people expect them to be. So they'll be better than the Giants in that division, I think. So, yeah, give me Luke McCaffrey as a deep sleeper. Again, he's going undrafted. Just pay attention to the first 2 weeks of the season, because if De'Ami Brown is not involved, if Luke McCaffrey's on the field, I'm looking for 30 to 40%, snap share. To me, that sounds great, because it's just what we talked about with Darnell Mooney. If I'm the Eagles secondary and I'm Cooper DeJean, yeah, I'm going to go cover Terry McLaurin, and I'm going to double cover him if I need to, because there's really nobody else that can beat you. So to me, it's like, if Luke McCaffrey's going to beat us today, great. Just don't let it be Terry that rips off, the big one. So yeah, give me Luke McCaffrey as a deep, deep sleeper at the wide receiver position. We don't have any metrics. He's a rookie. So it's just going off ADP and what the eyes, tell us right now. So keep an eye on him the first couple of weeks, see what his involvement is like, and then make your decision. Do you want to pick him up off the waiver wire, or do you want to, let somebody else go and grab him? So let's finish up the skill positions before we get into our fun games here that we like to play at the end of the show. You've got 2 tight ends. I've got 1. So why don't you start us off with one of your 2 tight end sleepers, and then we'll pause and jump into the chat because we got some questions in there.
Perfect. I'll start with the one that, I always pound the table for this guy because I've always liked him since college, and that's Tyler Conklin. He's finally got a good quarterback. Hopefully he stays healthy. He's super athletic. And after Garrett Wilson, you kind of have some question marks too, after Breece Hall as well. But
right
after that, you kind of have questions. And just you keep watching some training camp footage and stuff in the practices, and not in the games, in the practices, you're seeing a lot of 83. With the blackout visor, with all of his arms, and he's beating the linebackers, and he's a athletic tight end that can beat the linebackers. He learned how to block in Minnesota, so he's a 3-down tight end. So I don't see Ruckert or any of the other tight ends really getting on the field either, because I don't think they are going to get a rapport with Rodgers like Conklin can. So I think he's going far too late for a starting tight end, so that's what classifies me as a sleeper. And he got some run with Kirk Cousins in the Vikings too, right around the end there before he signed with New York, and no one was good with Zach Wilson. but
No.
Tyler Conklin was still getting some targets. So I
Yeah.
mean, and he did what he could.
Yep.
So,
Yep. I think Tyler Conklin is basically free at this point. So if he's someone that you're interested in as a sleeper at the tight end position, there you go. I'm going to talk about Ben Sennett real quick. It's a pretty similar argument to what I just laid out for Luke McCaffrey and even Austin Eckler. This is, I promise, this was not the Commanders episode of the show. It just sort of happened that way. I think we were excited about Ben Sennett as a riser in the pre-draft process because this just wasn't, outside of Brock Bowers, this just wasn't the tight end class to go grab in Dynasty. But he's ADP of 195 off the board, tight end 21, which means he's getting drafted in round 16 or going undrafted. Same question, who's the wide receiver 2 in Washington? Jahan Dotson opens up a 14% market share. But here's the two key pieces that I want to just lay this out. First is people are all, Zach Ertz is still going to be relevant. He's still going to be the guy. Okay, I don't believe that. But if he is, in 2022, which is the last time that Cliff Kingsbury was a head coach, Arizona was 6th in the league in lining up in 12 personnel. Meaning Ben Sennett and Zach Ertz, again, I don't believe it, but if it's true, they're both going to be able to play. They're both going to be on the field. And now you're telling me that Dotson's not there. So if we don't really have a great wide receiver 2, I do see them running enough 12 personnel to have a relevant role. Ben Sennett has a 98% burst score and 95% speed score at his combine and athletic testing at his pro day, meaning guy can move. So he's a pretty good athlete. It's a free player. He's undrafted. Historically, my brand has almost always exclusively been either go get the hero tight end early or punt. And 9 times out of 10, I punt. The value is just not there for me to grab those hero tight ends early. So if I'm punting, I'm not going to grab Ben Sennett as my tight end 1. But if I feel like I have to have 2 tight ends because my build at the tight end position is really, really thin, Ben Sennett is someone I am 100% targeting. And the other person I'm targeting is your next tight end. So let's go ahead and wrap up the skill position, guys, with one more tight end before we jump back into the chat.
yeah, I'll raise your Ben Sennett and I'll bet Jatavian Sanders because I think he's got a clear-cut way to tight end 1 for the Carolina Panthers as well. Like I said earlier, I think Bryce Young is going to make a little bit of jump. Deontay Johnson's the clear wide receiver 1 in my eyes. Adam Thielen is still good, but he's getting old. And then I'm pretty sure Sanders can probably outrun Mingo. I'm just not a big Mingo guy. That's just how it goes. Just in the open space and his lateral movements, no other tight end, and I can name 3 of them off the top of my head that I think are still on the Panthers. That's Tommy Tremble. He's more athletic than Tommy Tremble.
Yep.
Ian Thomas. He's way more athletic than Ian Thomas. And Steven Sullivan. Like, all those names, I want them blocking for me. I want them blocking for Sanders.
Agreed.
Sanders is a wide receiver weapon. And, he might be playing some more slot than tight end, maybe. But he's also, like, I don't have the burst or speed scores, but I bet they're up there with Sennett as well.
Yeah.
He's just not the tight end the NFL usually likes to see, but you know what? Who also broke those molds? That was Evan Ingram.
Yeah, that was.
So I think he could be one of those players that could do that. And Evan Ingram as a rookie was a league winner. He just was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're not going to hear any complaining. Like I said, I stared down Ben Sennett and Jatavian Sanders, and then I saw you put the names in the doc, and it's like, perfect, we're going to talk about them both, so I don't have to. Fantastic. So let's jump back here just a little bit. Going back to Rafi's question here, any faith Jamison Williams, will take that step up? It's his first season coming in without injuries and or off-field drama.
I think they're going to give him a run no matter what. So, I mean, yes, because after St. Brown and then you have Laporta, it's hard to gauge what the lines are going to be because they outperformed what they were supposed to be last year. They were supposed to be what they were last year is what they were supposed to be this year, so it's really hard to gauge. Like, Jamison Williams is going to have a better statistical season, but the lines might not. So then did he really step up is what I'm thinking. I have a hard time believing that he's not just the deep threat, but I also, like, after those running backs, the tight end and the wide receiver 1. There's no one else, so he's gonna get run. So
yeah, I mean I think he's gonna have every opportunity. Like I said, I try to keep the noise from camp pretty low. I try not to read everything. I talked about this last week, but I'll say it again really quickly. I just really am looking for like negative news or injuries in camp. I'm not really the hype is the hype. Like every player is fantastic when they're running around in their shorts and shell and no pads, and it's like whoop-de-doo, right? I do believe Dan Campbell is going to give him a chance. I struggle with Jameson Williams, not because of the injuries. I just don't know how big of a piece of the pie he's going to get. Gibbs catches passes. Laporta obviously catches passes. Then you have one of the alphas of the receiving game in Amon-Ra. So I just don't know how much is left over. I agree with you. I think he's a deep threat. I think here's my last thought on Jameson Williams, and we'll move into some more comments and then the games. I think he's going to be better for real life football for the Lions than he will be for fantasy.
Exactly.
I think that's his role. And I know I've got a bunch of buddies that are Lions fans, and sorry, but they don't care as long as they get to the Super Bowl, But yeah, I think that's where we're at. So really quickly here, Juice, how about Swiss Army knife Taysom Hill, in or out on Taysom Hill this season?
I'm in. I wouldn't call him a sleeper though, because someone's always going to take him.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially if you can put him in your tight end spot. Yeah. He's not really
the only downside of Taysom Hill is on the weeks that he doesn't hit, you almost get 0.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you could legitimately get a 0. So
slander Dennis Allen has been saying with Kendre Miller, and you never know what Derek Carr, like we just never know. We don't know.
Let me tell you something. If by week 7 Spencer Rattler is the quarterback and Taysom Hill is the starting tight end, and whoever Rashid Shaheed, I mean, it's like I don't even know who's gonna be playing for the Saints. I'm very, very low on the Saints this year. I'm not out, but I'm not in love with it for sure.
I'll say I'm out for sure.
You're out. Yeah.
I'm out.
Well, look, Ryan Ramczyk's out for the year. That makes a big deal. That's a big deal. So, all right, let's do some higher or lower here, and then we'll get into our favorite segment of games, the legit or bullshit game. So, Adam Thielen finished with 1,014 yards in 2023. Historically, he has ranged from 750 to 900. Adam Thielen will finish over under 850 receiving yards this season. And if you're in the chat, please jump in. These are for you guys as well. So the line I have set, Adam Thielen, 850. Over, under?
I'm going to say under. And that's just because I think they're going to spread the ball out a little bit more. Young is going to get a little bit more. He's going to be better under center. Yep. I think he's going to progress a little bit more into his progressions and stuff like that. And I mean, Deontay Johnson's there. So I think he's going to take a lot. He's another great route runner. So
yes.
He's going to be open. And Jatavian Sanders, I think, is going to get some run. They're going to run the ball a lot, too. So I think it should be under.
This show's about sleepers, but if it was about values, Deontay Johnson would be like the number 1 player at the wide receiver position as a value, because he is just being ignored. It's the Bryce Young effect, sadly. So the chat's pretty split on this one, over under. So, okay, here we go in the second one. Terry McLaurin, sadly, has never finished as a wide receiver 1. His best fantasy finish ever in full PPR is wide receiver 14. With the Jahan Dotson trade, Terry McLaurin will finish over under wide receiver 13.
I mean, history tells us it's probably not a good sign, but with the Daniels, I don't think we've seen McLaurin with a quarterback like Daniels, and Daniels likes to throw the football, and he likes throwing it to his number 1 option. So I can say over.
Okay, so here it is. So wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I could see it.
This is his first wide receiver 1 season. There you go. KW3, Kenneth Walker III. KW3 finished RB18 and 19. RB18 and RB19 his first 2 years in the league. Over under, KW3 finishing as RB17 this year.
I like the over on that as well, just because I don't think he's going to be. I think it's finally going to be a year that he's not injured ever.
Okay.
And Zach Charbonnet, there might be a little bit of a split, but I'm not too worried about Charbonnet over Walker. And Shane Waldron's gone, so I mean that's a plus.
It's a plus.
I think you're only going to go
bad for the Bears.
Yeah, it's bad for the Bears backfield, but I think it's going to be a plus for Kenneth Walker.
Yep.
And I mean, they're going to use him to set up the passing game because that's when
Yeah.
Geno is best. And they have JSN. He should be a breakout guy. You have DK Metcalf and an aging Lockett, yes, but he's still reliable. So I think I can see over there.
All right. So if you're taking the over as RB17, how high would you think he can actually finish?
Probably. I don't think he can be a running back one.
All right. So not
Probably
top 12.
right around the 13, 14 range. I
Okay.
think just a little bit over that.
Dejuice in the chat. Rafi took the over, but Dejuice in the chat for the last one says right at the line I said of McLaurin at 13 says right at wide receiver 13. So yeah, guys, jump in on this. Rafi agrees with you. RB13 there. Yeah, jump in on these. I know this is interactive. It's fun. All right, 2 more, and then we'll get into legit or bullshit. James Conner has never played an entire NFL season. Last year, I didn't know this until I looked this up. Last year was the first time in his career he rushed for over 1,000 yards. James Conner will rush for over under 965 yards this year.
It's a really good line because I think he's going to get a little bit more run than we think at the beginning of the season, and then it becomes more of a committee
with
during
Benson.
the end of the season.
Yep.
So it's like with Benson, yes.
Yeah.
So does he do enough at the beginning of the year to gain it? I think he does. I think he can squeak out the 1,001 yards. I think it's going to be very close, though.
Yeah. Okay. So take the over on 965. Last one. In 2019 in Cleveland, your quarterback sleeper, Baker Mayfield, rushed for 3 touchdowns. Since then, he has only had 1 rushing touchdown in each consecutive season. In 2024, Baker Mayfield will rush for over under 1.5 touchdowns. Does he get to 2? You're on mute.
My bad. I think I don't think it's over 2. No, I think I'll take the under on that one.
Take the under.
Just
Yeah.
because I like the 2 running backs, like we said, with the 2 running back sets, and that'll set up RPO games. I think there's too many plays that you don't need to risk hurting your starting quarterback over.
Agreed. Yeah. I think it's 1 as well. I'm taking the under on my own line there. So let's play our game, legit or bullshit. These are fun. Guys in the chat, throw a fire emoji if it's legit. Throw the old, as I like to tell my daughter, the chocolate ice cream emoji if it's bullshit. These are a lot of fun. CMC will have 2,000 total yards this season.
I think it's bullshit even if Ayuk gets traded because I mean he's had a lot of run. He does get banged up a little bit. I can't see them going over that with CMC because you also have Debo that can take some of those yardage away, even in the receiving and in the rushing game.
Well, that's why I say it's total yardage.
Yeah. So, that's why you said total yards. Yes.
Yep.
I think Debo, especially if Ayuk gets traded, will be a bigger factor in that.
Okay. And everyone in the chat is giving the poo emoji right now. So no one thinks CMC over 2K. Okay. Dak Prescott will not finish inside the top 5 at quarterback.
Yeah.
So he'll finish 6 or below. Legit or bullshit?
That's very legit. I mean, he has the talent, right? But he's 31 now and has 1 playoff win.
Yeah.
Now I know that's more real football cases of like not to buy him, but it's also after CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson and everyone we talked about, it's going to be tough. Yeah. It's going to be tough sledding. They're going to be passing a lot for sure, but again, you and I both agree. I think they're going to blow it up.
Yeah, QB3 last year. So the guys throwing fire emojis in the chat here. So they think he's going to finish as QB6 or lower as well. Sorry, could be ladies in there as well. Let's just make sure. Jalen Hurts will not have double-digit rushing touchdowns this season.
That's definitely legit. That's why they went and got Saquon Barkley. Because, I mean, he's been running the tush push, and he was too injured last year to really do anything other than kind of the tush push and just putting the team on his back.
Yep.
I think Sirianni is a little bit too hard on Hurts right now because he's finally healthy, and it's just like, just feed Saquon. That's why you got him. That's why you brought him. Feed him and just set up Hurts for success in the passing game.
15 rushing touchdowns. That's going to hurt those. It's going to hurt those Jalen Hurts drafters. I think Jalen Hurts is still going to be a QB1. I still think he has top 3 potential. We're not saying he's
He's
not
still
going
going to
to, but
steal some. It's just I don't think
yeah,
it's double digits.
it may not be double digits. Yeah. So touchdown regression for Mr. Hurts. Lots of fire on that one. No Kelsey plus Barkley. Kelsey going to do that. Yeah. Lots of comments about Kelsey. So Cooper Kupp is being drafted as the wide receiver 18. He will outperform his ADP.
I don't think so. He's going to get a tweak at some point, so I think he's going to either fall at 18 or a little bit lower.
Okay.
Nakua proved that I think he can prove it again that he's might be the co-wide receiver one on that team.
Okay.
So I don't think either one of them finishes wide receiver 12 or above. So I think Puka will also be a little bit higher than Cooper Kupp will be. And I think Kupp's perfectly okay with that if they win games. So, and like we both said, I think McVay likes Kyron Williams a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to focus a little bit more on the run as well. You have to protect Matt Stafford somehow.
The one thing I will say is I want to just show Rafi's comment because he is clearly in on Cooper Kupp with that many fire emojis. So, I just with 99 retiring.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Rams defense is going to be because it does not look good on paper. So I think they're going to be behind in games. And as much as they want to run Kyron, I think they're going to have to throw. Stafford's a little banged up right now. We'll see what it's like. But
is it just Kupp's mentality? Because it seems like he's ready to retire too. But it seems like that after every season. So I don't know if I can trust him.
I think they're pushing for one playoff run, and then that's it. I think if they make a deep playoff run, I think that's it for Stafford. Like I firmly believe that if this is not Stafford's last season, I think next year is. I think Stafford's got a maximum of 2 years left in the league, and I think he calls it quits. He's got 4 daughters. He's made his money. He's won his ring. Like, what more do you want? What more do you need? You know what I mean? Like Dan Marino chased it, never got it. Brett Favre chased it. Aaron Rodgers is still chasing it. Like, at some point, you got to live your life. So, all right, let's keep going. Neither Justin Fields, here we go. Now it gets spicy. Neither Justin Fields or Russell Wilson will return QB2 numbers this year.
Yeah, I think that's legit as well. But it's more because Arthur Smith is the OC and he loves pounding the rock. I think Najee and Jalen Warren are going to get a lot of run because he used Tyler Algier that pissed off a lot of people, a lot of the Bijan owners last year. He's going to do it again with this one.
I'm one of those.
Yeah, so I think it's the Arthur Smith effect.
It's the Arthur Smith effect, exactly. If it smells stinky, you might want to go looking for poop. So
yeah.
The new starter in Denver, Bo Nix, will throw for over 3,000 yards in his rookie season.
I think that's bullshit, but okay. I think it could be close. I really do, because I don't know. He's not Drew Brees, we know that, but I think they're also going to do the run game a little bit more than what we expect. So, yeah.
DeJuice, Arthur Smith should, for the folks that are listening on Spotify or Patreon and can't see the show, DeJuice's comment, Arthur Smith should be the poop emoji, 100%. That was a great comment.
But like you said as well, getting back on the Bo Nix, 3,000 yards.
Yeah, Bo Nix, okay.
After Cortland Sutton, I don't know who else is there, so it's going to be a little tough.
Yep. All right. Sam Darnold will have a better fantasy season than Bryce Young.
I'm going to say that's legit as well, but that is the Kevin O'Connell effect, because I think just because now we know J.J. McCarthy is not going to play, Sam Darnold's going to be in there all year. They're going to build a rapport, and he made Nick Mullins look legit.
He did. I never answer these. Obviously, I wrote the questions, but I will say as I write them, they're funny. And I everybody that's played this game is like, you set pretty good. So I pride myself on setting pretty good lines for discussion purposes and for thought purposes. But if I had to answer my own question here, I'm taking the talent of Justin Jefferson over whatever they have in Carolina.
Yep.
And I think Jefferson brings Sam Darnold along more so than the receivers and the guys in the pass catching options do in Carolina. So
when O'Connell left the Rams system too, like a lot of their wide open plays left as well. And that's just what Kevin O'Connell schemes people open, and Sam Darnold can hit an open receiver.
Yep. So. Breece Hall will finally rush for over 1,000 yards this year.
Again, I think yes, but I think he's the one probably closer to the 2,000 yards, in my opinion, because I think he's going to be used often and heavily in the passing and the
Oh,
rushing game. But again, Aaron Rodgers loves using his running backs as well
yeah.
to set up his wide receivers and his other playmakers. So yeah, he's going to be used a lot.
Overall RB1 season for Breeze?
Oh yeah, I think he could be.
You think he can be the overall RB1?
I mean, I just picked the Jets to go to the Super Bowl, so I think so. Yeah,
Wow. Did you?
I did, and it's against Baltimore in the AFC Championship game because I think they get over the hump of the Chiefs finally.
So I was going to say, so you have the Chiefs losing in the divisional round
Yes, to Baltimore.
to
Yeah.
Baltimore. So you have so then I'm assuming that means you have Baltimore as the 1 seed with the Chiefs going to Baltimore to M&T Bank.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I don't know why. That's just I have a
Okay.
feeling. Yeah.
All right. Keenan Allen will finish as the wide receiver 3 in fantasy scoring amongst the Bears' 3 big wide receivers.
That's bullshit.
Okay.
I think he's the clear wide receiver 2 there.
And Rome.
He could even push DJ Moore, but I love DJ Moore, and
Okay.
I like him as the wide receiver 1 there. But it's just Keenan Allen, man.
Yeah.
We've never seen Keenan Allen have 3 or 2 other legit options. I think Rome Odunze is the clear wide receiver 3 for this year. Yeah. Next year is a different story. But I think Allen's going to give it one more run to be like, see, you shouldn't have gotten rid of me.
Right. I'll write these, obviously, with the research, like the stats are just research ones. But sometimes I do them as like, let's get a pulse check on like where people are. So here's another pulse check. Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Puka Nacua will all finish as wide receiver 2s.
It's close, but no, it's bullshit. I don't think Chris Olave gets there, even though I'm a big Chris Olave guy. I just don't trust Derek Carr or anyone else. So I don't think they're going to be that good at moving the ball down the field. And he's the clear wide receiver 1, and I don't like Olave being my wide receiver 1.
No, I don't
either. I'd rather see him as my wide receiver 2. So I think he's going to have a little bit of a tough season.
So of those 4 names, who finishes inside the top 12 for you?
Garrett Wilson and Puka could get close, and London could get close.
So you think 3 of the 4 do? Okay.
I think 3 of the 4 could. They're all about fringe players, but I think they could.
That's why I picked them, because they're like right on that cusp of like, are they going to be top 12? Are they going to be the 4 best wide receiver 2s? Yeah, it's going to be close. Tyler Lockett will once again have a higher fantasy finish than JSN.
That's bullshit. I think JSN is the clear number 2 right now.
Okay.
Lockett's getting older, but he is reliable.
Lockett's knocked. He has a knock right now. He's not practicing, so there's that. Exactly. But yeah, okay.
It's just I don't see JSN's just a little bit too athletic right now for where Lockett is in his career. You can see there is a drop off. So I think that's where we're going to see JSN finally take that next step. And yes, Drake London is going to have a career year, but that's not saying that much with Desmond Ridder.
That's what I was going to say. You know, it's like it's sort of like Bryce Young, is there's really nowhere to go but up, right? Like, come on, Drake. If you can't do it now, I've got serious questions. This is a big year for Drake London and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah,
I think for dynasty value, I actually think it's a big year for London, Pitts, and I will throw Chris Olave in that category. I might throw Garrett Wilson in there because we don't know who the quarterback's going to be.
Like the great Michael Jordan said, the ceiling is the roof. We just don't know.
That's right. Yeah, there's some interesting names in Dynasty that there's big years coming up for these guys. So 3 more, and then we'll wrap the show here. A.D. Mitchell will have more receiving yards than Xavier Worthy.
I don't know. To be honest, I think it's probably legit.
Legit or bullshit, Cody. It's not neutral. You got to pick a side.
I'm going to say legit.
Okay.
And it's just because of the weapons the Chiefs have. And I know that's weird saying, but when Hollywood Brown comes back, that's going to take some targets. Rashee Rice is going to play all year. I like him. I like Travis Kelce. So he is the deep threat for sure. But I think A.D. Mitchell is just going to get the wide receiver 2 job, and he's just going to see a little bit more volume.
Yeah, I don't answer my own questions, but I will just say from a fantasy perspective, as you're projecting these players out, I project Worthy to be I project him to be the deep shot guy. You know what I mean? Like, I think Mitchell will have a bigger role. He has a bigger route tree. So we'll see. Ben Sinnott and Jatavian Sanders, our 2 sleepers, will have more targets than Brock Bowers.
So is that targets together or
Targets
just
together.
okay.
Sinnott and Sanders will have more targets than Bowers.
I think that's legit, and I think this is a Michael Mayer legit because I think they're going to play a lot of 12 personnel.
They're going to play a lot of 12.
And Mayer is no slouch either.
Yeah.
So I think Brock Bowers and Mayer are going to get some run that's going to split it.
Yep.
Right down the middle.
It's hard because I think people are so in on Bowers and they're so not out, but they're so like depressed on the value of Sinnott and Sanders, even though we both have said like we see a path to them being relevant this season, whether it's because the wide receivers aren't great or because the tight end room is garbage. But sometimes I just like to get a pulse check. All right, last one. Pat Freiermuth will have more receiving yards than all Pittsburgh wide receivers combined, excluding George Pickens. So all the other receivers not named Pickens, who has more receiving yards, Freiermuth or the rest of the receivers?
I want to say legit, but it's going to be bullshit because, again, of Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
If he can't make Kyle Pitts work, he's not going to get Pat Freiermuth to work.
You know what? Arthur Smith's so crazy. It could actually be that Freiermuth is like a 1,000-yard season and 10 touchdowns. You could have a Sam season. You know what I mean? Like he won't, but he could. like if you wake me up in week 18 and I almost said Sam Porter and Pat Freiermuth has double-digit touchdowns and 1,000 yards, I'll go, yeah, okay. Not because I believe in Freiermuth, because Arthur Smith is crazy. So who knows what he's gonna do. Well, Cody, thanks for jumping in, man. This was a good show. I appreciate it. Hopefully we had a lot of fun. We love these games. Guys, you can message me on Sleeper at P Ruskin. I create these lines. I create all these awesome, well, I think they're awesome, but hopefully you guys enjoy them questions. But if you guys have some thoughts on legit or bullshit and some lines you want me to add in for next week's show, definitely send me a DM. I'll try to add them in if they make sense for the show and feature some of your guys' thoughts and questions as well. Cody, as we wrap, tell the folks where they can find you. And if you can, one last time, just throw your link in the chat so guys can go subscribe to the channel as I go and grab mine. But where can the folks find you and check out your content?
You can find me on the Dynasty Pros YouTube. That's now in the chat right there. It's the Fourth and Dynasty podcast. We do a few more shows over there as well. But the show that I'm on is Fourth and Dynasty with Brian Hartman. He's my analytics guy, and I'm the hot takes guy, I guess.
There you go.
That's what we'll say, but that's pretty much where all my stuff is.
Awesome. And obviously, if you are here, hopefully you're already subscribed. If you are not, jump on over to The Extra Point. You can also catch me on Patreon and Spotify. All of the shows go live pretty much on Fridays after we record on Thursdays. If you're interested in the weekly Pick'em tournament, hit me up on Sleeper at P Ruskin. I'll run that through Yahoo, $10 entry. Against no picks against the spread, just straight up picks, but with confidence points assigned. We'll run that all 18 weeks. If you missed the show, like I said, jump over to Patreon and Spotify. You can always subscribe there. And last but not least, next week will be our last 7 p.m. show, because after that we move to 4 p.m. because it's football time, boys. Let's go. Let's go. So see everybody next week at 7 p.m. for another episode of The Extra Point. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.